A lot of businesses want to show up in search results. It's frustrating. They think it's magic. They don't understand the algorithm. They think it might be kind of impossible for them to beat their competition. There are a lot of ways that they can accomplish some success in showing up in search that are surprisingly easy. So we're going to talk about some of those things today. I'm Mark Woodruff at Woody Creative.
And I'm Richard Hoy at Woody Creative.
And let's jump in. We're going to try to make this as one of our 10 minutes or less things. So let's jump in here. Richard, why don't you go ahead?
So if you want to get into local search results, you need to understand first why just a website is not enough. And then the next thing we're going to talk about is why you need to create content that answers local search queries, not just general search queries. And then finally, why it's critical to optimize something called your Google Business Profile. So let's dive in and talk about what the anatomy of a search results page is. So I did a search here on a pretty broad term, coffee, and Google doesn't really know what I'm looking for. So it's given me lots of different things. So the first thing it's given me is, well, is this related to something that you searched on before? That's my search history. The second thing that's given me is this Google Business Profile, or what we call the local pack in the industry. And that all that content comes specifically from your Google Business Profile. It doesn't come from your website. And then number three, those are all images that are coming from Google's image search engine. So if you want images to show up, you need to be sure that you're in that images search engine. And then the number four, that's all coming from actually a couple of different sources that Google is merging together, Wikipedia and the USDA website, to produce one search result. And then you actually don't get to web pages until you get all the way down to number five there. And that's Google's pulling web pages verbatim off the internet to satisfy those that position there. But the reason Google's doing that is because coffee is kind of a vague term and has what we call vague search intent. We're really not sure what the person's looking for. So what is search intent? It's figuring out what a searcher is looking for based on the phrases he or she is typing into the search blank. And I'm going to go through a demonstration here of how we go from really broad search intention to really narrow. So let's start for searching for cats. That's the most popular thing to search for on the internet, it seems. So if we just put in cats, we get a page similar to what we got when we put in coffee. Google doesn't really know what I'm looking for, so it gives me all sorts of options. Am I looking about the Cats musical? Am I looking for common questions about cats that get put into Google?
Are you looking for a saxophone player to fill in for your next jazz gig?
That's right. Are you looking for that? Are you looking for news items on cats? So it's giving me a whole bunch of different things. And so if you try to target the keyword cats, you're really not going to get very far because you got so much competition and it's very vague, and Google's probably not going to ever pull up your content. But if we narrow it down a little bit, let's say we search on cat cafes. Now Google says, okay, this is a little bit more specific. It kind of cleans up the results. It still thinks it's not quite sure what we're looking for, but it gives us a couple of pretty strong things. One is that local pack. So it's looking for local businesses with the term cat cafes in their name or in the there's as part of their services. But it's also giving us organic search results, and it's giving us information from Wikipedia. If we put an even narrower qualifier on that, we say cat cafes in Austin, well, that search phrase has very specific search intent. It's pretty clear from that search phrase that the person using that phrase is looking for cafes in Austin that deal with cats. And for those that don't know, cat cafes are kind of a trend where you can go and sip coffee or tea and watch cats run around. Not exactly relaxing to me, but to other people it is. Okay. And what you're left with are two search results when you have a very specific phrase like that, one with very specific search intent. You have the local pack and you have organic results. Now, you can't get into the local pack without a Google Business Profile. You can get into the organic results with just a website, but really you want to be in that organic. You want to be not really in the organic. results, but you want to be in that local pack because that's what's on top. That's what people tend to go through when they're using a query like this, because they're looking for a particular business. And you need a Google business profile to even be considered as part of those search results. So the next thing to look at is, what does this all mean to a local business? Well, one is you don't want to be focusing your content efforts on really broad keywords. You want to be focusing it on very narrow things that have qualifiers on them, like Austin, like your primary business in Austin or wherever you do business. If you don't have a Google business profile, you're going to be excluded from half these results. So you really have to have that just to even be listed in the top results. And then another important thing to understand is that if you only have a website, you're part of a much larger pool of content. So even though you may have local content and on your website, and you may talk about Austin and cats and your cat cafe, the first problem you have is Google has to look at that page and understand that you are a local business. But then the second problem is you're part of a much larger collection. Basically, every page on the internet that talks about cats in Austin and cat cafes, you're in that group of stuff for Google to go through. So the chances that you're going to appear are lower than if you have a Google business profile, which is something that Google specifically has for local businesses. So all the information that's in that database is local businesses. So Google doesn't have to figure out whether you're a local business or not. They know it if you're in there. And that database also contains a lot less competition, right? Because you're just competing against other cat cafes in the area. So that's why you want to have a Google business profile, especially if you're local. And in fact, it's critical, really, to having any successful local business marketing effort.
And I think I've heard you say that there's sometimes more trust involved, that the difference between where these results are, a lot of people don't understand, well, wait a minute, how many of these are ads? And they get kind of savvy about which ones are ads versus which ones are just organic results. But the fact that these are put to the top and they show them on the map, there's a sense of there's more of a trust factor involved.
That's correct. In fact, Google goes through a verification process before it allows people to claim those profiles, allows businesses to claim those profiles. So there definitely is a higher level of trust than the results on the bottom, which can come from anybody who puts up a website, basically.
Right. Okay.
So what is a Google business profile? So it's this block of information that appears on the right when you do a search. Usually it appears when you do a search for a particular business's name. It sometimes can appear, though, if a business is really well suited for the local search query that the person's put in, and Google feels like it's the best result. But generally, it'll appear when you search on a business's name, provided they have a Google business profile. And it contains really two types of information. It contains static information, which you would, as the name implies, would be things that don't really change. You know, your location, your business hours, your phone number, your legal business name. But it also contains dynamic information, your reviews, photos that you can upload and that your customers can upload, questions and answers that you can answer in questions that your people that are interested in your business can ask. And so Google wants to see really a combination of that. They want to make sure that the static information is accurate, but they also want to make sure that there's lots of dynamic information, that there's lots of activity, because Google doesn't want to recommend a business in a search result and then the person goes there and it's an empty storefront.
Right.
It's a bad experience. So they're they really favor businesses that have lots of good reviews and lots of activity in those rankings. So it's really the cornerstone of any local SEO effort. That's the first place we start when we start a local SEO marketing program for a client. We make sure that that's set up correctly, and we make sure that we are constantly enhancing it. And of course, Google Business Profile setup and management is part of the broader local SEO efforts that we do for clients here at Witty Creative when we set up a marketing program for them. So just to recap, you want to make sure that you have more than just a website, because again, remember, Google pulls from not just your website, and especially local, it pulls primarily from that Google Business Profile. So if you just have a website, you're missing out really on half the possible search results. And you need to make sure that you're targeting keywords with your content that are local. You don't want to be too broad. You want to make sure that you're answering really narrow questions and providing good answers to things that are relevant to local search queries. And then finally, you want to keep that Google Business Profile optimized, and you want to keep it updated. That's really critical, because Google doesn't like to send people to businesses that potentially aren't there anymore. They want to know that you are active and have lots of customers and lots of reviews. So that's it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Richard. Talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.